every wrong word you say pushes the people you love a little further away. I've been there. Sitting alone in my American backyard, watching fireflies appear one by one, I made a tiny promise. This is not a story about immigration. It's about marriage, motherhood, and how small lights, a kind sentence, a child's laugh, can guide you home when everything else is dark. Stay. Your fireflies are waiting. The Firefly Question. Have you ever felt so lost that even the language you speak seems to turn against you? Like every wrong word you say pushes the people you love a little further away. I've been there. Sitting alone in my American backyard, watching fireflies appear one by one, I made a tiny promise. This is not a story about immigration. It's about marriage, motherhood, and how small lights, a kind sentence, a child's laugh, can guide you home when everything else is dark. Stay. Your fireflies are waiting. Let me ask you something strange. Imagine you're standing in your own kitchen. The coffee machine is beeping. Your kids are arguing about a blue crayon. Your partner just walked in. And you want to say something simple. Something like, I missed you today. But the words get stuck halfway up your throat. They tangle with your accent, your fear, the memory of all the times you said the wrong thing before. So you say nothing. You just nod. And another tiny crack forms in the wall between you and the people you love most. That was me. 3 years ago. Right here, in this house, in a quiet suburb that still smelled like fresh paint and, no, foreign. That's the word. Everything felt foreign. Not scary. Just heavy. Like I was wearing a coat made of someone else's skin. You're not here for a sad story, though. I promise. I'm not going to make you cry for 30 minutes and leave you there. That's not how fireflies work. See, fireflies don't scream for attention. They don't explode into fireworks. They just blink. Small. Slow. Almost shy. And when you're sitting in complete darkness, those tiny little blinks become the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. This video is called Firefly Promise because that's exactly what saved me. Not a big miracle. Not a sudden moment where I woke up speaking perfect English and everyone clapped. No. It was a series of small, almost embarrassing lights. A neighbor who didn't correct my grammar but just smiled and said, "Good morning, sweetie. Nice day, huh?" A toddler who handed me the wrong color block and said blue when it was clearly red, and I laughed so hard I forgot to be afraid. A husband who sat next to me on the couch, turned off the TV, and said, "Tell me one thing. Just one. Take your time." Those are the fireflies. And here's the truth that no grammar app will ever tell you: you don't learn a language by memorizing rules. You learn it by collecting small moments of courage. One wrong sentence at a time. One embarrassing mispronunciation at a time. One night where you cry in the bathroom, then wash your face, then go back out and try again. That's what this channel is about. Real English story practice. Not textbook English. Not the kind where you have to sit in a stiff chair and repeat after a robot. I'm talking about the English that lives in your kitchen, your backyard. Your fight with your partner at 11 p.m. when you're both exhausted and the kids finally fell asleep. So who am I to tell you this? I'm just a woman who moved to the United States not for a dream, but for love. And love, let me tell you, is a terrible English teacher at first. Because love makes you want to say everything perfectly. And perfection is the enemy of every single person learning a new language. For the first 2 years, I measured my worth by how many words I didn't mess up. I kept a scoreboard in my head. Today I only made 3 mistakes. Today I understood the cashier without asking her to repeat. Today I didn't cry. That scoreboard almost broke me. Because here's the thing about living in America, or anywhere that isn't your first home. The culture doesn't just live outside you. It gets inside your bones. The way people greet each other. The way they say how are you without actually wanting an answer. The way they laugh at things that aren't funny to you. The way they expect you to speak up in meetings, to fight for space, to be loud. I'm not loud. I never was. And for a long time, I thought that was a failure. But then one summer evening, I was sitting on my back porch. The kids were in bed. My husband was washing dishes inside. And I saw the first firefly of the season. Just one. Blinking alone near the fence. And I remembered something my grandmother used to say back home. She said, when you feel lost, look for the smallest light. Not the sun. Not the moon. Just one little light. Follow it. It knows the way. I didn't follow that firefly physically. But I followed the idea. I stopped trying to learn English like a machine. I started learning it like a human. Through stories. Through mistakes. Through the way my 4-year-old son said I love you, Mommy, with his little American accent that still melts my heart every single time. That was the beginning of the Firefly Promise. Not a promise I made to anyone else. A promise I made to myself. I will stop waiting for a big sign. I will collect small lights. And I will let them guide me home. You're here because you're tired. I know. You've watched 100 videos. You've downloaded 10 apps. You've repeated the same phrases until your mouth hurt. And somehow, you still feel stuck. That's okay. That's exactly where you're supposed to be. Because the fireflies only come out when it's dark enough for them to matter. So here's what we're going to do together in this video. I'm going to tell you a real story. My story. Not about moving here, that's boring and not the point. But about what happened after. About marriage, motherhood, cultural differences that made me want to scream, and the tiny, ridiculous, beautiful moments that fixed things one blink at a time. And along the way, you're going to practice your English listening, reading, and speaking. Slowly. Gently. No pressure. Just like those fireflies. Are you ready? Good. Because the first small light is about to appear. And it's not where you think. A quiet evening in my backyard. Picture this. It's a Tuesday evening in late June. The sun took forever to go down tonight, like it was stubbornly holding on to the last drop of daylight. Now the sky is that deep blue color that isn't quite black yet. The kind that makes everything look softer. Even the ugly fence your husband promised to paint 2 summers ago. I'm sitting on an old wooden bench that creaks when you shift your weight. My left foot is tucked under my right thigh. There's a mug of lukewarm chamomile tea next to me that I forgot to drink 20 minutes ago. Behind me, through the sliding glass door, I can see the kitchen light still on. My husband is wiping the counter. My 7-year-old daughter is showing him something on a piece of paper. Probably a drawing. Probably another dinosaur with too many legs. Inside, there's noise. The dishwasher. The TV murmuring some home renovation show. A toy that sings the same 3 notes over and over until you want to throw it into next Tuesday. Outside, though? Outside is quiet. And then I see it. The first blink. A tiny yellow-green glow near the rose bush that never blooms right. It flashes once. Then twice. Then it disappears for so long I think I imagined it. But no. There it is again. Closer this time. That's when the second one appears. Then a third. Within 10 minutes, my backyard has turned into something magical. Not dramatic. Not like the movies where fireflies explode into a symphony of light. Just, scattered. Random. Imperfect. Some blink fast. Some blink slow. One of them keeps landing on my knee, then flying off, then coming back like it's checking on me. My daughter slides the door open. Mommy, can we catch them? I smile. You can try. But remember what we learned last summer? She groans dramatically. She's very good at dramatic groans for a 7-year-old. They don't glow when you trap them. That's right. They only glow when they're free. She runs off to get a jar anyway. Kids never believe you the first time. Here's what I want you to understand. This quiet evening didn't just happen. It wasn't luck. It wasn't because I suddenly became perfect at English or perfect at marriage or perfect at being a mom. No. This evening exists because I almost lost it. Multiple times. And then I learned something that no one tells you when you're struggling to build a life in a new culture. You don't find peace by fixing everything. You find peace by learning to sit with the broken things until they stop hurting so much. Let me rewind a little. Not to the beginning of my story in America. I promised you this isn't about moving here. It's about what happened after. So let me take you to a different evening. Same backyard. Same bench. Same fireflies, probably. But a very different woman sitting on it. That woman, let's call her past me, was crying. Not the pretty movie cry where a single tear rolls down your cheek and you look contemplative. I'm talking about the ugly cry. The one where your nose runs and your face gets splotchy and you can't breathe because you've been holding everything in for 3 weeks and it finally exploded. Why was I crying? Because earlier that day, my husband and I had a fight. A stupid fight. The kind that starts over something meaningless. I think it was about whether to buy paper towels in bulk, and then metastasizes into everything else. Into every silent dinner. Every time I felt misunderstood. Every time I tried to explain something in English and the words came out wrong, and he got frustrated, and I got defensive. And then we were both just two people standing in the kitchen, speaking the same language but somehow understanding nothing. That fight didn't end with a hug. It ended with him going to the garage to fix something and me going to the backyard to cry where the kids couldn't hear. I sat on that same creaky bench. Same mug of tea, probably. And I remember thinking, what am I even doing here? I don't belong in this country. I don't belong in this marriage. I don't even belong in this backyard. That's the thing about darkness. It convinces you that it's permanent. But then, and I swear this is true, one firefly landed on my hand. Just one. It blinked 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. Like it was trying to tell me something. Then it flew off. And I don't know why, but I stopped crying. Not because I was suddenly happy. Not because the fight was resolved. Just because something so small and so fragile was still glowing. In the middle of my mess. In the middle of my I don't belong here pity party. A bug the size of my thumbnail was doing its little light show like nothing was wrong. I laughed. A weird, wet, half-sob laugh. And I made a decision. Not a grand one. Not a I'm going to change my whole life tomorrow decision. Just a tiny one. I decided that I would stop trying to fix everything at once. I would stop measuring my marriage by the fights and start measuring it by the quiet moments. I would stop measuring my English by the mistakes and start measuring it by the sentences that actually worked. That decision didn't fix anything overnight. But it shifted something. You know that feeling when you're carrying a really heavy box, and someone helps you shift it to a slightly more comfortable position? It's still heavy. Your arms still hurt. But suddenly you can breathe again. That's what that firefly did for me. Now, 3 years later, I sit on this bench and I watch my daughter chase fireflies with a jar she'll eventually leave open on the grass. I listen to my husband hum some song he heard on the radio while he finishes the dishes. I feel the warm summer air on my arms. And I think, you almost gave this up. You almost let the darkness convince you that these small lights didn't matter. But they do matter. They matter more than the big things, honestly. Because big things, moving, marrying, having children, those happen once or twice in a lifetime. But small things happen every day. A firefly on your hand. A child who hands you a drawing of a 7-legged dinosaur. A husband who turns off the TV and says, "Tell me one thing." Those are the fireflies that actually guide you home. And here's the beautiful, weird, almost embarrassing truth. Learning English works exactly the same way. You don't become fluent because you studied grammar for 8 hours straight. You become fluent because you understood one sentence in a song. You recognized one word on a cereal box. You said good morning to a neighbor and they said it back, and for one tiny second, you felt like you belonged. Those are your fireflies. Collect them. Don't trap them. Let them glow and disappear and come back again. My daughter just came back inside. Empty jar. Grass stains on her knees. Mommy, they won't stay in the jar. I know, sweetheart. They're not supposed to. She climbs onto my lap, still smelling like sunscreen and summer. My husband walks out, dries his hands on his jeans, and sits next to us on the bench. It creaks loudly. He doesn't say anything. He just puts his arm around my shoulder. Another firefly blinks near the fence. This is home. Not the house. Not the country. Not the perfect English sentences I still can't always find. This. Right here. A bench that creaks. A kid who smells like sunscreen. A husband who doesn't need words right now. This is the Firefly Promise. And tomorrow, when I mess up again, and I'll come back to this bench. I'll watch the lights. And I'll remember that darkness is never the whole story. Now, you might be wondering. How did I get from crying alone on this bench to sitting here with my family? What actually changed? Was it therapy? Was it time? Was it something my husband did? I'll tell you in the next section. Because the real story, the one about the promise we made, started on a different night. A night when there were no fireflies at all. The promise we made. Let me tell you about a night when there were no fireflies. It was autumn. October, maybe. The kind of October where the leaves have already fallen and turned brown and crunchy, and the air smells like someone's fireplace 2 houses down. I was in the kitchen again. I spend a lot of time in kitchens, apparently, making soup. Lentil soup. The only thing I knew how to make without a recipe because my mom taught me when I was 12. My husband, let's call him David, not his real name, but it doesn't matter, was sitting at the kitchen table. He wasn't doing anything. Just sitting. Staring at his phone but not really looking at it. You know that posture? The one where someone is physically present but their mind is somewhere far away? A place you can't follow? I wanted to say something. Anything. But every sentence I started in my head sounded wrong in English. Too needy. Too angry. Too sad. Too foreign. So I just stirred the soup. Lentils spinning in circles. Like my thoughts. Then David said something that changed everything. He said, "Do you remember the first time we saw fireflies together?" I almost dropped the wooden spoon. Because here's the thing. David and I didn't grow up with the same memories. He grew up in Ohio. Fireflies every summer. Catching them in mason jars with his older brother. Letting them go before bed because his mom said they'd die inside. I grew up in a place where fireflies existed but we called them something else, and we didn't catch them because we were too busy doing other things. But the first summer after we got married, we sat in this very backyard, back when it was just dirt and a few sad weeds, and we saw our first firefly together. A single blink near the fence that wasn't even built yet. David pointed at it and said, "Look. They're saying hello." I didn't believe him. I was too tired and too lonely and too overwhelmed by everything. But I nodded. And I remembered that moment because it was one of the few times in those early months when I didn't feel completely alone. So when he asked, "Do you remember?" something in my chest cracked open. Not in a painful way. In a relieved way. Like a window you've been trying to open for hours and finally it gives. "I remember," I said. My voice sounded strange. Smaller than usual. David put his phone down. Face down. That's important. He never puts his phone face down. He looked at me. Really looked. Not the I'm looking at you while thinking about something else look. The kind where his eyes actually focused on my face like he was seeing me for the first time in months. We made a promise that night, he said. Do you remember that? And here's where I have to tell you something uncomfortable. I didn't remember. Not because I have a bad memory. But because that night, I was so deep in my own sadness that I wasn't fully there. I was sitting next to my husband, watching a firefly, and inside my head I was thinking about every mistake I'd made that week. Every awkward conversation. Every time someone looked at me with that polite confusion when my accent got too thick. I was so busy feeling sorry for myself that I missed the most important thing he ever said to me. What promise? I asked. David smiled. Not a happy smile. A sad one. The kind that says, I've been carrying this alone for too long. He said, I told you that fireflies only glow when they're looking for each other. And you said, that's sad. What if they never find each other? And I said, then they keep glowing until they do. And you made me promise that if we ever got lost, really lost, like can't find our way back lost, we would just keep glowing. Small lights. No big gestures. Just little blinks so the other person knows we're still here. I stared at him. And then I started crying. Again. I know, I cry a lot in this story. But this time it was different. This time I wasn't crying because I was sad or lonely or frustrated with my English. I was crying because I had been so focused on everything I was doing wrong that I completely missed the fact that my husband had been glowing at me. 4 months. And I never saw it. The way he left me notes on the fridge with smiley faces. The way he made coffee for me every morning even though I never asked. The way he sat next to me on the couch without saying anything, just existing in the same space, being present. Those were his fireflies. His small lights. And I was too busy staring at the darkness to notice. Here's what I learned that night. Promises don't have to be loud. They don't have to be sworn on Bibles or sealed with dramatic speeches. The most important promises are the ones you make without realizing it. The ones you keep without thinking. The ones that show up as a warm mug of coffee and a phone placed face down. I wiped my face with my sleeve, very elegant, I know, and I said, I'm sorry. I didn't remember. But I want to keep that promise now. David reached across the table and took my hand. His fingers were warm. A little rough from work. He said, you've been keeping it this whole time. You just didn't know. And then he pointed toward the sliding glass door. Outside, in the cold October dark, there were no fireflies. They were gone for the season. But the porch light was on. A small, steady, unblinking light. David had installed it months ago without telling me. He put it on a timer so it would turn on every evening at sunset and turn off every morning at sunrise. That's my firefly, he said. So you always know where home is. I don't know what happened to the lentil soup. It probably burned. I don't care. That soup doesn't matter. What matters is that in that moment, I finally understood something that no English textbook could ever teach me. Love and language are the same thing. Both of them require you to be bad at first. Both of them require you to make mistakes in front of someone and trust that they won't laugh. Both of them require you to keep showing up, even when the words get stuck, even when the accent feels too thick. Even when you're sure the other person doesn't understand. Because here's the secret. They understand more than you think. They're just waiting for you to keep glowing. After that night, things didn't magically get better. We still fought. I still messed up my English. He still got frustrated. But something shifted. We started collecting small lights together. A sticky note on the bathroom mirror that said you've got this. A text message with just a firefly emoji. A hand squeeze under the dinner table when the kids were being too loud and I was about to lose my mind. Those small lights added up. Not quickly. Not dramatically. But they added up. And that's the real Firefly Promise. Not one big romantic moment. Not a perfect marriage with no fights. Just two people who decided to keep glowing even when they couldn't see each other. Especially when they couldn't see each other. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's beautiful and all, but what does this have to do with learning English? Everything. Absolutely everything. Because when I stopped being afraid of making mistakes in English, I started making progress. Not because I suddenly became smart or talented. But because I stopped measuring myself by the words I got wrong and started celebrating the words I got right. I stopped waiting for fluency to arrive like a thunderstorm and started collecting small moments of understanding like fireflies in a jar that I would always let go. You want to learn English? Really learn it? Stop trying to be perfect. Start trying to be present. Start noticing the small lights. The cashier who smiles when you say, "Have a nice day," without stumbling. The song lyric you finally understand after hearing it 100 times. The conversation with your child that ends in laughter instead of frustration. Those are your fireflies. Collect them. Let them glow. Let them guide you. And if you ever feel like giving up, like the darkness is too big and your light is too small, remember this. Fireflies don't compete with the sun. They don't have to. They just have to blink. Once. Twice. 3 times. Enough for someone who's looking to see them. Someone is looking for you right now. Your spouse. Your child. Your future self. Keep glowing. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the time I almost stopped glowing for good. The fight that nearly broke us. The night I sat in the dark and forgot every promise I ever made. And the tiny, ridiculous thing that brought me back. But first, take a breath. Look around. Find one small light in your life right now. I'll wait. Found it? Good. Now let's keep going. When lights went out. Let me take you to a night I'm not proud of. It was winter. Cold. The kind of cold that hurts your face the second you step outside. The fireflies were long gone, they don't come out until late spring, and honestly, I didn't expect them to. I wasn't looking for small lights anymore. I had forgotten they existed. The fight started, as most fights do, over nothing. Dinner was late. The kids were cranky. One of them had spilled an entire box of crackers on the floor, and I stepped on a piece that dug into my heel like a tiny knife. David came home from work tired. Not the normal tired. The exhausted, "Don't talk to me, I just want to sit in silence" tired. I needed help. He needed space. We needed the same thing from opposite directions. I don't even remember who said the first sharp word. Probably me. Probably something like, "You never help." And then he said something like, "I work all day so you can stay home." And then I said something worse. And then he said something even worse. And then we were both standing in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we made the Firefly Promise months earlier, saying things that couldn't be unsaid. The kids were watching TV in the living room. Too loud. They didn't hear us. But I heard every word. And every word felt like a small death. Here's what no one tells you about marriage in a second language. When you fight in your native language, you have all your weapons. Every insult. Every sarcastic comeback. Every perfect sentence designed to wound. When you fight in a language you're still learning, you feel powerless. Not because you can't be mean, trust me, you can be mean in any language, but because you can't defend yourself. You can't find the right words to explain why you're hurt. You can't articulate the nuance. So you either say nothing and feel invisible, or you say the wrong thing and make everything worse. That night, I chose wrong. I shouted something in my native language. Not English. Something David didn't understand. And the look on his face, confusion mixed with anger mixed with something that looked like betrayal, broke me more than any English word ever could. Now you're doing that, he said. Now you're shutting me out completely? I wanted to explain. I wanted to say, I didn't know how to say it in English. I wasn't trying to shut you out. I was trying to survive. But the words wouldn't come. My throat closed up. So I did the only thing I could do. I walked out. Not dramatically. Not slamming doors. I just walked to the bedroom, closed the door quietly, and sat on the floor in the dark. The closet light was on. A tiny sliver under the door. That was the only light in the room. I stared at it for what felt like hours. One small, pathetic, yellow line on the carpet. And I thought, that's all I have left. A closet light. I didn't cry that night. That's how you know it was bad. When you're past crying. When your eyes are dry and your chest is hollow and you're just sitting. Existing. Waiting for something to happen. Something did happen. Around 2 a.m., David opened the bedroom door. He didn't turn on the overhead light. He just stood there in the doorway, a dark silhouette against the hallway light. He said, "Are you awake?" I didn't answer. But I also didn't pretend to be asleep. That was my small light. Not answering, but not lying. He walked over and sat on the floor next to me. Not touching. Just near. We sat like that for another hour. Two people on the carpet in the dark, the closet light still glowing between us. Finally, he said, "I don't know how to fix this." And I said, "Maybe we're not supposed to fix it. Maybe we're just supposed to sit here until it hurts less." He didn't respond. But he moved closer. His shoulder touched mine. And we sat there until the sun came up. That was the lowest point. Not the fight. Not the shouting. The silence afterward. The moment when I realized that promises don't protect you from pain. They just give you a reason to stay when everything in you wants to run. Here's the thing about darkness that most people get wrong. They think darkness is the absence of light. But that's not true. Darkness is the absence of hope. You can be sitting in a completely black room and still feel fine if you know the sun will rise in a few hours. But if you believe the sun will never come back, that's when the darkness wins. That night, I didn't believe the sun would come back. I thought I had broken something permanent. I thought David would never look at me the same way again. I thought my English, my terrible, stumbling, imperfect English, had finally destroyed the only good thing in my life. I was wrong. But I didn't know that yet. Over the next few days, we were polite to each other. The way strangers are polite. "Can you pass the salt? Did you pick up the kids? I'm going to bed early." No warmth. No fireflies. Just two roommates who happened to share a last name and a mortgage. I started having a secret thought. A thought I'm ashamed to admit. I thought, maybe I should leave. Maybe I should go back to where English isn't a daily battle. Maybe I'm not strong enough for this life. But every time that thought came, I remembered something. Not the promise. Not the fireflies. Something smaller. Something almost stupid. I remembered the porch light. David never turned it off. Even after the fight. Even during the cold, polite days. Every evening at sunset, that light clicked on. Every morning at sunrise, it clicked off. Like nothing had changed. Like he was still keeping his promise even when we weren't speaking. That porch light saved me. Not because it was bright. Not because it solved anything. But because it was consistent. It didn't care that we had fought. It didn't care that I had shouted in a language he didn't understand. It just turned on. Every single night. A small, stubborn, ridiculous light. One evening, I stood at the sliding glass door and watched that light. The kids were already in bed. David was in the shower. And I realized something that changed everything. Small lights don't fix the darkness. They just remind you that the darkness isn't all there is. I didn't have a dramatic breakthrough. I didn't run to David and apologize and cry and hug. I just opened the sliding door. I stepped outside. It was freezing. I stood on the porch under that light for maybe 30 seconds. Then I went back inside. But that 30 seconds was enough. Because when I went back inside, I didn't go to the bedroom. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. 2 mugs. I put one on the counter where David always stands in the morning. And I wrote a note on a sticky note. Just 2 words. Thank you. I didn't sign it. I didn't explain. I just stuck it to his coffee mug and went to bed. The next morning, when I woke up, there was a sticky note on my pillow. His handwriting. 3 words. I'm still here. That was the beginning of the climb back. Not a grand reconciliation. Not a tearful apology. Just sticky notes and porch lights and 2 people who decided, separately and together, that the darkness wasn't going to win. You want to know how to survive the lowest moments in your life, whether it's marriage or language learning or anything else? Stop looking for the big rescue. Stop waiting for someone to save you. Start looking for the small lights. The ones that are already there. The porch light. The sticky note. The friend who sends you a meme even though you haven't replied in 3 weeks. The English word you finally remembered without Googling it. Those lights won't fix everything. But they will keep you alive until the sun comes back. And the sun always comes back. I promise. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the strangest English lesson I ever learned. It didn't come from a teacher or an app. It came from silence. The kind of silence that follows a fight. And it taught me more than any textbook ever could. But first, go find your porch light. It's still on. It never turned off. Learning English from silence. Here's something nobody tells you about learning English. The best lessons don't come from textbooks. They don't come from apps with cartoon elves that guilt trip you. They don't even come from teachers, no matter how kind they are. The best lessons come from silence. I know that sounds crazy. How do you learn a language without words? Let me explain. After that terrible night, the fight, the closet light, the sticky note with thank you, something strange happened. David and I didn't suddenly start talking more. Actually, we talked less. But the silence between us changed. It used to be heavy. Angry. Full of things we wanted to say but couldn't. Now it was softer. Like a blanket instead of a wall. I started listening differently. Not to words. To sounds. The way David sighed when he opened the fridge and saw there was no milk. The way he hummed under his breath when he was nervous about something at work. The way his footsteps slowed down when he walked past the bedroom door, like he was checking if I was okay without actually asking. Those sounds taught me more English than any grammar lesson ever did. Because here's the truth about real communication. Words are only about 7% of it. The rest is tone, rhythm, pause. The things people don't say. The things they almost say. The things they say with their shoulders and their eyebrows and the way they set down a coffee mug. I stopped trying so hard to find the perfect English sentence. I started listening to the silence between the sentences. And slowly, weirdly, my English got better. Not because I learned new vocabulary, but because I stopped being afraid of the spaces. Let me give you an example. One morning, about a week after our fight, I was making breakfast. Pancakes. The kids wanted smiley faces made of chocolate chips. David came into the kitchen. He stood near the counter. He didn't say good morning. He just stood there, watching me flip pancakes. The silence lasted almost 2 minutes. Old me would have panicked. Old me would have filled the silence with nervous chatter. Something like, sorry the pancakes are taking so long, or did you sleep okay? Or some other pointless question designed to prove that I could still speak English. But new me just let the silence be there. And then David said something. Not a big thing. Just, those look good. 2 words. Those look good. But the way he said them. Slow. Soft. Like he was testing whether it was safe to speak again. Like he was offering me a small light and hoping I would see it. I saw it. Thanks, I said. 1 word. Then I put a chocolate chip smiley face on his pancake. Not because he asked. Just because. That was a conversation. Not a long one. Not a deep one. But it was real. And it happened because we both understood that the silence before the words was just as important as the words themselves. Here's the lesson I want you to take away from this. When you're learning English, stop trying to speak perfectly. Start trying to listen completely. Most learners focus on output. What am I going to say? How do I say it correctly? What if I make a mistake? That's like trying to run before you can stand. You're so focused on the words leaving your mouth that you forget to notice the words coming in. The real secret to fluency is input. Not input from textbooks. Input from real life. From the way your partner sighs. From the way your child says mommy in 5 different tones that mean 5 different things. From the way the cashier at the grocery store says, have a good one, without even looking up. Because she said it 10,000 times and it's just background music to her, but to you, it's a whole sentence you understood without translating. That's your Firefly. Catch it. I started keeping a small notebook. Not for vocabulary lists. Not for grammar rules. For sounds. Every day, I wrote down 1 sound I heard that made me feel something. 1 sentence that landed differently. 1 moment when I understood more than the words. Here are some entries from that notebook. The way David says hey when he comes home. Not loud. Not quiet. Just present. Like he's announcing that he's back without needing me to respond. My daughter singing a song she learned at school. I don't know all the words. But I know the melody. And I know when she gets to the happy part because her voice goes up. The neighbor's dog barking at the mailman every single day at 2 p.m. I don't speak dog. But I know that bark means someone is here. And that's communication. This sounds silly, I know. A grown woman writing about dog barks in a notebook. But here's what happened after a month of doing this. I stopped being afraid of silence. I stopped feeling like I had to fill every empty space with English words that might be wrong. I started understanding that silence is not emptiness. Silence is where meaning lives. It's where your brain processes. It's where your heart catches up to your mouth. And my English improved. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But steadily. Like a plant growing in good soil. Slow enough that I didn't notice at first. Then one day, I realized I had gone a whole morning without translating in my head. The words just came. Not perfectly. But they came. Here's the science part, because I know some of you love that. Your brain has something called the affective filter. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. When you're stressed, scared, or embarrassed, your brain literally blocks language learning. It's too busy protecting you from the threat, even if the threat is just a judgmental look from a cashier, to absorb new information. When you're calm, when you feel safe, when you're not trying so hard, that filter drops. And language flows in like water. Silence lowers your affective filter. Silence tells your brain, hey, we're not in danger. No one is going to laugh at us right now. We can just listen. That's why the best English learners are often the quietest ones. Not because they don't have anything to say, but because they've learned that listening is the fastest path to speaking. So here's my challenge to you. For the next week, stop trying to speak perfect English. Stop practicing your pronunciation in the mirror. Stop stressing about verb tenses. Just listen. Listen to the sounds around you. The TV shows. The conversations at the coffee shop. The way your neighbor says hello in the elevator. The silence between the words. Write down one sound every day. Not the words. The feeling behind the words. And at the end of the week, I promise you, something will have shifted. Not because you learned new vocabulary, but because you remembered how to be present. And presence is the foundation of every language, every love, every life. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the smallest light that ever guided me. It wasn't a firefly. It wasn't a porch light. It was something so tiny and ridiculous that I almost missed it completely. And it changed everything. But first, sit in silence for 60 seconds. Just listen. Don't try to understand. Just hear. Your fireflies are already there. You just have to be quiet enough to notice them. Small lights begin to glow. Here's the thing about small lights. They never announce themselves. They don't send a calendar invite. They don't tap you on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, I'm about to change your life." They just show up. Quietly. Almost shyly. And by the time you notice them, they've already been there for a while. The first small light after our dark winter came from a box of macaroni and cheese. I know how ridiculous that sounds. Stay with me. It was a Tuesday. Rainy. The kind of rain that starts and stops and starts again, like the sky can't make up its mind. The kids were fighting over a stuffed animal that neither of them had touched in 6 months. I was tired. Not the heroic tired of a mother doing it all. The pathetic tired of someone who hasn't slept well in weeks and is running on caffeine and resentment. I opened the pantry to find something for lunch. Boxed mac and cheese. The orange powdered kind that real food snobs make fun of. I grabbed it. Then I stopped. The box had instructions. In English. 6 simple steps. Boil water. Add pasta. Cook for 7 minutes. Drain. Add milk. Add butter. Add cheese powder. I had made this exact mac and cheese at least 50 times. I didn't need to read the instructions. But for some reason, that day, I read them. Slowly. Out loud. Boil water. I said it to myself. Add pasta. Cook for 7 minutes. My 3-year-old son wandered into the kitchen. He looked up at me with those big eyes that haven't learned to be cynical yet. "Mommy, why are you talking to the box?" I laughed. A real laugh. The first one in weeks. "I'm practicing my English," I said. He thought about this for a second. Then he grabbed a box of crackers and started reading the back. Crackers. Whole grain. No artificial flavors. He couldn't read. He was 3. He was just copying me. But in that moment, standing in my messy kitchen with rain tapping on the window and macaroni boiling on the stove, I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. Not because David had suddenly become the perfect husband. Not because my English had magically improved. But because I had stopped hiding. I was reading a macaroni box out loud in my imperfect accent, and my son was joining in, and the world didn't end. No one laughed. No one corrected me. No one looked at me like I didn't belong. That was a firefly. A small, stupid, beautiful light. After that, I started doing something weird. I started reading everything out loud. Grocery lists. Junk mail. The back of shampoo bottles. The kids' picture books. Not because I needed to. Because I wanted to hear my own voice in English without being terrified of it. At first, I did it when no one was home. Then I did it when the kids were around because they didn't care. Then one evening, David walked into the living room while I was reading a Dr. Seuss book to our daughter. Not to our daughter. To myself. She was already asleep. I was just sitting in the rocking chair, reading Green Eggs and Ham out loud because I liked the rhythm. David didn't say anything. He just leaned against the doorframe and listened. When I finished, he said, "Your accent is beautiful." I almost dropped the book. No one had ever said that to me before. People had said, "Your English is good," it wasn't, or "I can understand you, barely," or "Don't worry, you'll improve, thanks, very helpful." But no one had ever called my accent beautiful. Because accents aren't beautiful. They're obstacles. They're mistakes. They're the thing that marks you as different. That's what I believed. Until David said those 3 words. Your accent is beautiful. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was being nice. Being polite. Being the kind of husband who says things to make his wife feel better. But he said it again the next week. And the week after that. And every time I read out loud, he would look up from whatever he was doing and just listen. Not judge. Not correct. Listen. Here's what I learned from a box of macaroni and cheese and a Dr. Seuss book. Small lights don't fix your problems. They change how you see them. I still made mistakes in English. I still got frustrated. I still had days when I wanted to throw my phone across the room because I couldn't understand the automated customer service robot. But something had shifted. I stopped seeing my accent as a wound and started seeing it as part of my story. Part of me. Not something to hide. Something to share. The second small light came from a neighbor. Mrs. Patterson. She lived 2 houses down. She was 73 years old, retired, and had lived in the same house since 1985. She knew everyone's names. She brought cookies to new families. She waved at the mailman like he was an old friend. I had been avoiding her for 2 years. Not because she was mean. Because she was nice. And her niceness terrified me. Because if she was nice to me, I would have to be nice back. And being nice back meant having a conversation. And having a conversation meant using English. And using English meant possibly messing up. So I just waved from a distance and walked quickly into my house. But one afternoon, I was pulling weeds in the front yard, badly, because I don't know anything about weeds, and Mrs. Patterson walked over. "Those are actually flowers," she said, pointing at the clump I was about to rip out. I froze. "Oh. Sorry." She laughed. "Don't be sorry. I pulled the same ones when I first moved here. My husband thought it was hilarious." She didn't ask where I was from. She didn't comment on my accent. She didn't say your English is so good. She just talked to me like I was a normal person who happened to be pulling flowers instead of weeds. We talked for 15 minutes. About the weather. About her cat who liked to sit on the roof for some reason. About the best way to get dandelions out of the lawn. I understood maybe 80% of what she said. The other 20%, I nodded and smiled. She didn't seem to mind. Before she left, she said, "You know, I've lived here almost 40 years. And I still don't know how to get rid of dandelions. Some things just stay." Then she walked back to her house. That was it. 15 minutes. No life-changing advice. No profound wisdom. Just a neighbor who treated me like a person instead of a project. That was a firefly. After that, I started saying yes to small things. Yes to playdates with other moms even though I was nervous. Yes to calling the doctor's office myself instead of asking David to do it. Yes to ordering coffee without practicing the sentence 10 times in my head first. Every yes was a small light. And here's the part that still surprises me. Most of those small interactions went fine. Not perfect. But fine. The barista understood medium coffee with oat milk. The doctor's receptionist was patient. The other moms didn't laugh when I said snack instead of snacks or mixed up my prepositions. The disaster I had been imagining for 2 years, the one where everyone stops talking and stares at me like I'm an alien, never happened. Not once. That's the thing about fear. It's loud inside your head. But outside your head, in the real world, most people are just trying to get through their day. They're not analyzing your grammar. They're not waiting for you to fail. They're just living. And you can live right alongside them. Even with imperfect English. Even with an accent. Even with mistakes. You don't need to be fluent to be understood. You just need to be brave enough to try. By the end of that spring, I had collected so many small lights that I stopped keeping count. A text from David with a heart emoji. A drawing from my daughter with "I love mommy" written in wobbly letters. A wave from Mrs. Patterson every morning. A macaroni box that taught me to read out loud. None of these things fixed my marriage completely. None of them made my English perfect. But they did something better. They reminded me that I was already home. I just hadn't noticed because I was too busy looking for the wrong kind of light. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the cultural differences that almost tore us apart. Not the big ones. The tiny, daily, invisible ones. The ones no one warns you about when you marry someone from a different background. And how we learn to laugh at them instead of fight over them. But first, go find your own macaroni box. Something small. Something silly. Something you can read out loud without anyone judging you. Your fireflies are everywhere. You just have to start looking. Cultural differences at home. Let me tell you about the day I almost divorced my husband over a spoon. Not a fancy spoon. Not a family heirloom. A regular, stainless steel, completely forgettable spoon. The kind you use to stir your coffee and then leave in the sink. Here's what happened. We had been married for about 3 years at this point. The fireflies were starting to come back. Things were better. Not perfect, but better. Then one morning, I opened the silverware drawer to get a spoon for my yogurt, and every single spoon was in the wrong place. The big spoons where the little spoons go. The little spoons where the big spoons go. Forks mixed with knives like some kind of anarchist protest. I lost my mind. Not quietly. Not internally. I lost it out loud, in front of the children, holding a yogurt container like a weapon. Who put the spoons in the wrong section? David walked into the kitchen, still half asleep. What are you talking about? The spoons. They're all wrong. Look at this. Look at this nightmare. He looked. He blinked. He said, "It's just spoons." And that, my friends, is when I realized that culture isn't about big things like holidays or food or language. Culture is about spoons. And how you arrange them. And whether you even care. Here's the background. I grew up in a household where silverware had a strict order. Spoons on the left. Forks on the right. Knives next to forks. Small spoons on top of big spoons. This wasn't a rule anyone ever stated. It was just known. Like breathing. Like putting your shoes by the door. If someone put a big spoon where a little spoon belonged, it felt like a violation of the natural law. David grew up in a household where silverware went into a drawer. Any order. Any arrangement. Sometimes spoons were in the dishwasher for 3 days because no one cared enough to unload it. His family's attitude towards silverware could best be described as chaotic neutral. We had lived together for 3 years. 3 years of me silently rearranging the spoons every time he unloaded the dishwasher. 3 years of him not noticing that I was silently rearranging the spoons. 3 years of resentment building over something so stupid that I couldn't even say it out loud without feeling ridiculous. But that morning, the yogurt spoon broke me. After I finished yelling about the spoons, yes, I actually yelled about spoons, David sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Okay. Explain it to me. Why does it matter?" I opened my mouth to explain. And then I realized I couldn't. Because there was no logical reason. It wasn't more efficient. It wasn't more hygienic. It was just the way things were supposed to be. The way I was taught. The way that felt like home. I don't know why it matters, I finally said. It just does. David nodded. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't say I was being crazy. He just nodded. Then he said, "Okay. Show me how you want the spoons. I'll try to remember." And that's when I understood something important. Cultural differences aren't about right and wrong. They're about what feels normal. And normal is just what you grew up with. The spoon incident opened a door. Suddenly, we started noticing all the other tiny, invisible differences that had been rubbing against each other like two rocks in a shoe. For example, silence. When I'm upset, I get quiet. Not passive-aggressive quiet. Just, processing quiet. I need time to figure out what I'm feeling before I can talk about it. In my culture, that's normal. It's respectful. It's giving yourself space. In David's American upbringing, silence means something is wrong. If someone is quiet, you ask them what's wrong. You push. You try to fix it. Because silence is a problem to be solved, not a space to be respected. So for years, we had this terrible dance. Something would happen. I would go quiet. He would ask, "What's wrong?" I would say, "Nothing." He would say, "Clearly something is wrong." I would say, "I just need a minute." He would hear, "I don't want to talk to you." And then we would both be hurt and confused. We didn't solve this overnight. We didn't solve it with a dramatic conversation. We solved it with small lights. One night, after a small disagreement, I said, "I'm going to sit on the porch for 15 minutes. I'm not angry. I just need to think. Then I'll come back and we can talk." David looked relieved. Okay. 15 minutes. I sat on the porch. No phone. No distractions. Just me and the fireflies. It was summer again. After 15 minutes, I went back inside. He was sitting on the couch. He didn't say anything. He just patted the seat next to him. We talked. Not perfectly. But better. That was a firefly. Here's another difference. Food. I grew up eating with my family every night. Dinner was an event. Everyone sat down together. No phones. No TV. You ate what was on your plate and you said thank you to the person who cooked it. David grew up eating in front of the TV. Sometimes at the table. Sometimes not. His family loved each other just as much as mine did. They just expressed it differently. For the first few years of our marriage, I thought David didn't care about family dinners. He thought I was being controlling. We were both wrong. We just had different scripts. The solution? Compromise. 2 nights a week, we eat at the table with no screens. The other nights, we eat in the living room and watch something together. Is it perfect? No. Does anyone get exactly what they want? No. But we're eating together. And that's what actually matters. Learning English taught me something about cultural differences. Actually, learning English is a cultural difference. Every time I open my mouth, I'm navigating 2 worlds. The grammar and vocabulary of English. The rhythm and assumptions of my first language. Sometimes they fit together. Sometimes they clash. But here's the beautiful part. The more I accepted my own weirdness, my spoon obsession, my need for silence, my dinner table expectations, the more David accepted his own weirdness. And the more we accepted each other. You don't have to become American to live in America. You don't have to erase your culture to learn English. You just have to find the small lights that help you translate between worlds. A spoon drawer that you both understand. A 15-minute porch rule. A compromise about dinner. Those are your fireflies. Collect them. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the best English teachers I ever had. They're under 4 feet tall. They leave toys on the floor. And they don't care about my accent at all. But first, look around your own home. Find one tiny cultural difference that's been bothering you. Something so small you're embarrassed to care about it. Now ask yourself, is it worth fighting over? Or is it just different? The answer might surprise you. The children speak both worlds. My children have never known a version of me that speaks perfect English. Think about that for a second. Every word they've ever heard come out of my mouth, every sentence, every story, every I love you, has been in an accent. Has had mistakes. Has been imperfect. And they don't care. Not because they're generous or forgiving. Because they literally don't know the difference. To them, my English isn't broken. It's just Mom's English. The only one they've ever known. That realization hit me like a truck one afternoon when my daughter was 4 years old. She was drawing at the kitchen table. I was making lunch. She looked up and said, "Mommy, how do you say butterfly in your language?" I told her. She repeated it. Then she said, "How do you say butterfly in English?" I said, "Butterfly." She frowned. "That's the same word." "No, sweetheart. That's the English word. The other word is for my language." She thought about this for a moment. Then she said, "But you speak English. So both words are yours." And just like that, a 4-year-old solved a problem I had been struggling with for years. Both words are mine. Both languages are mine. I don't have to choose. I don't have to be one thing or the other. I can be both. I can be all of it. That was a firefly. Here's what I've learned about children and language. They don't judge. They don't correct your grammar. They don't care about your accent. They just want to be understood. And they want to understand you. Everything else is noise. My son, who is now 5, has never once said, "Mommy, you said that wrong." Not once. What he says is, "Mommy, I don't understand. Can you say it again?" And then I say it again. And he listens. And he figures it out. And we move on. No shame. No frustration. Just communication. Imagine if adults treated language that way. Imagine if, instead of looking confused or correcting you, they just said, "Say it again. I want to understand." How different would your English learning journey be? Children are the best English teachers because they haven't learned to be embarrassed yet. Think about how a child learns their first language. They don't study grammar. They don't memorize vocabulary lists. They don't practice pronunciation in front of a mirror. They listen. They mimic. They make mistakes. They get corrected gently, if at all. And within a few years, they're speaking fluently. That's not magic. That's how human brains are designed to learn language. But somewhere along the way, we adults decided that learning a language should be painful. That it should involve textbooks and tests and shame. That if you're not making progress quickly, you're failing. My children taught me a different way. Every night, we read books together. In English. I read aloud. My accent is still there. I still stumble over words sometimes. But my kids don't care. They're snuggled against me, looking at the pictures, pointing at their favorite parts. Sometimes they correct me gently. "Mommy, that says giraffe, not giraffe." And I say, "Oh, you're right. Thank you." And we keep going. No drama. No shame. Just learning. One evening, my daughter asked me to read a book in my native language. I didn't think she would understand. She doesn't speak that language. But I read it anyway. She listened to the sounds. She looked at the pictures. When I finished, she said, "That was beautiful. Read it again." She didn't understand the words. But she understood the feeling. The rhythm. The love. And that was enough. Here's the thing about raising children in two languages. It's messy. Some days, they mix words from both languages in the same sentence. Some days, they forget a word in English but remember it in my language. Some days, they refuse to speak anything but English because that's what their friends speak. I used to worry about this. I used to think I was failing them somehow. That they would end up not fluent in either language. That they would feel caught between two worlds, just like I did. But then I watched them play together. My daughter explaining a game to my son. Switching between languages without even noticing. Laughing. Connecting. Being completely themselves. And I realized, they're not caught between two worlds. They live in both. They have two homes. Two sets of words. Two ways of expressing love. That's not a disadvantage. That's a superpower. Your children don't need you to speak perfectly. They need you to speak to them. That's the lesson I want to leave with you. If you're a parent learning English, stop worrying about whether your accent is affecting your children. It's not. What affects them is whether you talk to them. Whether you read to them. Whether you sing to them. Whether you say "I love you" in whatever words you have. My children will grow up knowing that their mother's English was imperfect. But they'll also know that their mother never stopped trying. That she read to them every night. That she laughed at her own mistakes. That she asked for help when she needed it. That's the example I want to set. Not perfection. Persistence. One more story before we move on. Last summer, my daughter lost her first tooth. She was so excited. She put it under her pillow. The next morning, she ran into our bedroom holding a dollar bill. "The tooth fairy came," she shouted. I smiled. "That's wonderful." Then she looked at me. "Mommy, does the tooth fairy speak your language?" I thought about this. "I think the tooth fairy speaks every language," I said. "Because every child loses teeth. Everywhere in the world." She nodded seriously. "That makes sense. The tooth fairy is very busy." That night, I found a note on my pillow. Written in wobbly kindergarten handwriting. It said, "Mommy, you speak two languages. The tooth fairy only speaks one. So you are better than the tooth fairy." I kept that note. I still have it. On days when I feel like my English isn't good enough, I read it. And I remember that my children don't measure me by my grammar. They measure me by my love. Neither should you. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the storm we didn't see coming. The one that tested every promise we made. The one that made us wonder if all those small lights were enough. Spoiler, they were. But barely. But first, go talk to a child in your life. Any child. In any language. Just talk. They're not listening to your accent. They're listening to you. A storm we survived together. Remember how I said the fireflies came back? Well, they left again. And this time, it wasn't because of a fight over spoons or silence or any of the small things that had almost broken us before. This time, it was something none of us saw coming. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I was folding laundry. The kids were at school. David was at work. A normal day. The kind of day you don't remember because nothing happens. Then I answered the phone, and everything changed. David had been laid off. Not fired. Not performance-related. Just gone. The company was restructuring. His entire department was eliminated. Effective immediately. No warning. No severance package worth mentioning. Just a phone call and a "we wish you the best." I hung up. I sat down on the floor of the bedroom. The laundry basket tipped over. Socks scattered everywhere. And I thought, we're going to lose everything. That thought wasn't rational. It wasn't true. But fear isn't rational. Fear takes the smallest spark and turns it into a forest fire. David came home early. His face was gray. Not pale, gray. Like someone had drained the color out of him. He sat on the couch and stared at the wall for an hour without saying anything. I sat next to him. We didn't touch. We didn't speak. We just sat there, two people who had made a promise about small lights, now sitting in complete darkness. Here's what no one tells you about financial stress in a marriage. It doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects your brain. Your patience. Your ability to be kind. Every conversation becomes a landmine. Every expense becomes a betrayal. Every future plan becomes a joke. Should we really be buying name brand cereal right now? I didn't say name brand. I said the one the kids like. You know what, forget it. I'll just eat leftovers. No, eat the cereal. I don't care. Fine. Fine. That was a conversation we actually had. About cereal. Because when you're scared, everything becomes about the thing you're scared of. Even cereal. The first month was the hardest. David spent his days applying for jobs. Sending resumes into the void. Getting automated rejection emails. Some days, he would get 3 rejections before lunch. Other days, he would get none, which was somehow worse, because it meant no one had even opened his application. I watched my husband shrink. The man who had taught me to read macaroni boxes. The man who had installed a porch light so I would always know where home was. The man who had said, "Your accent is beautiful," when I needed to hear it most. That man was disappearing. Replaced by someone who couldn't look me in the eye. Someone who apologized for everything. Someone who flinched when I opened the mailbox. I didn't know how to help him. My English still wasn't perfect. I didn't know the right words to say. I didn't know how to comfort someone in a language I was still learning. So I did the only thing I could think of. I made soup. Lentil soup. The same soup I was making the night we made the Firefly Promise. I put it on the stove and let it simmer for hours. The whole house smelled like garlic and cumin and home. David walked into the kitchen. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the pot. "I remember this soup," he said. "I know," I said. He sat down at the kitchen table. I put a bowl in front of him. He ate. Slowly. Like he had forgotten what food tasted like. After he finished, he said, "I don't know how to fix this." And I said, "You don't have to fix it alone." That was a firefly. Storms don't ask for permission. They don't wait until you're ready. They just come. And when they come, you don't need big solutions. You need small lights. A bowl of soup. A hand on a shoulder. A quiet I'm still here. The second month was better. Not because David found a job, he didn't. But because we stopped pretending we weren't scared. We stopped having serial fights. We started telling the truth. I'm terrified, he said one night. Me too, I said. Really? You always seem so calm. I laughed. Not a happy laugh. A tired one. I'm not calm. I'm just good at pretending. That conversation, short, honest, imperfect, did more for us than any grand gesture could have. Because for the first time since the layoff, we were on the same team. Not David with the problem and me trying to fix it. Just two scared people holding hands in the dark. The neighbors found out somehow. Mrs. Patterson, of course. She showed up with a casserole. Not a small casserole. A huge one. The kind you make when you want to feed a family for 3 days. I heard about David, she said. This is nothing special. Just chicken and rice. Leave the dish on the porch when you're done. She didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say, let me know if you need anything. She just brought food and left. That's the American way I've come to love. Action instead of words. Other small lights appeared. A friend from the soccer carpool offered to watch the kids so we could have a night to ourselves. Another neighbor, one I barely knew, left an envelope on our doorstep with $200 and a note that said, pay it forward someday. I cried when I saw that envelope. Not because of the money. Because of the small light. Here's what I learned from that storm. You don't know how many fireflies are around you until it gets dark enough to see them. We survived. Not because we were strong. Because we were surrounded by small lights. A bowl of soup. A casserole. An envelope. A neighbor who didn't ask questions. A husband who finally admitted he was scared. A wife who stopped pretending to be calm. David found a job in the 4th month. Not a perfect job. Not a dream job. A job. Enough to pay the bills. Enough to let us breathe again. The night he got the offer, we sat on the back porch. The fireflies were out. Not as many as some summers. But enough. Blinking near the fence. Landing on the bench. Doing their small, beautiful work. David said, we should have a party. I said, let's just sit here. He smiled. The first real smile I'd seen in months. Okay. Let's just sit here. We did. For an hour. Watching fireflies. Listening to the kids laugh inside. Not saying much. Just being there. Together. That was the storm. It didn't destroy us. It didn't make us stronger in the cheesy, movie trailer way. It just showed us what we already had. Each other. A few good neighbors. A porch light that never turned off. And a promise about small lights that turned out to be true. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about the summer everything came together. The summer when the fireflies returned like they had never left. And the moment I finally understood what home really means. But first, look around your own life. Is there a storm you're trying to weather alone? You're not alone. I promise. The fireflies are there. You just have to let them in. Fireflies return every summer. The first firefly of the season arrived on May 27th. I know the exact date because my daughter screamed. Not a scared scream. A joyful one. The kind that makes you run outside in your bare feet thinking someone is hurt. Only to find a 5-year-old jumping up and down because a bug blinked at her. Mommy. Mommy. They're back. She was right. They were back. The fireflies had returned. Just like they always do. Just like they always will. That summer was different. Not because anything magical happened. Because everything ordinary finally felt like enough. David had been at his new job for almost a year. Not the job he lost. A different one. Smaller. Less impressive on paper. But closer to home. Less stress. A boss who actually said good job at the end of the day. We weren't rich. We weren't even comfortable by American standards. But we weren't drowning anymore. And that felt like a miracle. The kids were growing. Too fast. My daughter had lost 4 teeth. My son had learned to write his name. They fought over toys and shared ice cream and asked me to read the same book every night until I wanted to hide it in the trash. Normal kid things. Things I had worried I would never have when I was sitting alone on the porch crying 3 years earlier. And me? My English was still imperfect. I still mixed up prepositions. I still had moments when the word I needed just disappeared. I still felt a little spike of fear every time I had to make a phone call. But I had stopped measuring. I had stopped keeping score. I had stopped waiting for the day when I would wake up and sound like a native speaker. That day is never coming. And I'm okay with that. Here's what I finally understood. Fluency is not the absence of mistakes. Fluency is the presence of connection. I can have a conversation now. Not a perfect one. But a real one. I can tell a story and make people laugh. I can comfort a friend who is crying. I can argue with my husband and actually resolve something instead of just shutting down. That's not perfection. That's connection. And connection is the whole point. The summer of the Fireflies, we started a tradition. Every evening, after the kids were in bed, or sometimes before. If they were still awake and willing to be quiet, David and I would sit on the back porch. The same bench. The same creaky wood. The same view of the fence that still hadn't been painted. We would sit for 10 minutes. Sometimes 20. Sometimes just 5. No phones. No talking about bills or work or the thing that went wrong that day. Just sitting. Watching the fireflies blink on and off like tiny promises. One night, my daughter snuck outside. She climbed onto my lap without asking. She was supposed to be asleep. I didn't care. Mommy, she whispered, why do fireflies glow? I looked at David. He raised his eyebrows. You answer this one, look. They glow because they're looking for each other, I said. Like you and Daddy? I laughed. Yes. Like me and Daddy. She thought about this. Do they ever find each other? Every single night, I said. That's why they keep glowing. She fell asleep on my lap 5 minutes later. I carried her back to bed. Her room was dark except for a small nightlight shaped like a star. Another small light. Another promise. That night, after the kids were truly asleep, David and I stayed on the porch longer than usual. The fireflies were everywhere. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. The yard looked like someone had scattered tiny stars across the grass. David said, remember the promise? Which one? I asked. We've made a lot of promises. The first one. The night we saw the first firefly together. Before we had kids. Before the hard stuff. When it was just us and a dirt yard and a dream that seemed too big. I remembered. Of course I remembered. Not the words at first. But the feeling. Sitting next to him, not knowing if we would make it. Not knowing if I would ever feel at home in this country. Not knowing if love was enough. You said fireflies only glow when they're looking for each other, David said. And I said that's not sad. That's hopeful. Because it means they never stop looking. And I made you promise, I said, that if we ever got lost, we would just keep glowing. Small lights. Nothing big. We kept that promise, David said. He wasn't asking. He was stating a fact. We had kept it. Not perfectly. Not every day. There were nights when neither of us glowed. Nights when the darkness felt too heavy and the fireflies seemed like a cruel joke. But overall? Across 4 years of marriage, 2 kids, 1 layoff, countless fights, and more misunderstandings than I can count. We kept glowing. I leaned my head on his shoulder. He smelled like soap and coffee. The fireflies blinked around us like an audience applauding a show only they could see. Do you think they remember us? I asked. The fireflies. From summer to summer. Do you think they remember this yard? David laughed. I don't think fireflies have memory, honey. You don't know that. Maybe they do. Maybe they come back to the same places because something feels right. Like home. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I like that. I'm going to believe that. That was the summer I stopped being afraid of the future. Not because everything was perfect. Because I finally understood that it didn't need to be. The fireflies don't demand perfection. They just blink. Sometimes fast. Sometimes slow. Sometimes alone. Sometimes in a crowd. But they never stop. They never decide that one bad night means they should give up forever. They just keep glowing. And that's enough. Your English doesn't need to be perfect. Your marriage doesn't need to be perfect. Your life doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to keep glowing. Small lights. Every day. That's the promise. That summer, I started recording myself speaking English. Just for me. Just to hear my own voice. I would talk about my day. About the fireflies. About the soup I made for dinner. About the way my son said I love you with a mouth full of crackers. I listened back. At first, I cringed. My accent. My mistakes. My pauses. But then I kept listening. And I heard something else. I heard a person who was trying. A person who was showing up. A person who had come so far from the woman who sat alone on this bench and cried because she didn't belong. That woman still lives inside me. She always will. But she's not alone anymore. She's surrounded by fireflies. Every summer, they return. Every summer, I sit on this bench and watch them blink. And every summer, I remember the promise. Small lights. Always. Even when you can't see where they're leading. Even when you're not sure they're leading anywhere at all. You just keep glowing. And eventually, you find your way home. In the next section, I'm going to tell you what home actually means. Not the dictionary definition. Not the one you see in movies. The real one. The one I found in a backyard full of fireflies, sitting next to a man who kept his promise, listening to my children laugh inside. But first, go outside tonight. If you can. Look for small lights. They're there. They've always been there. You just have to remember to look. Finding home is not a place. I used to think home was a location. A country. A city. A house with a specific address. The place where you grew up, or the place where you planned to grow old. Home was somewhere you could point to on a map. Somewhere you could drive to. Somewhere you could leave and come back to. I was wrong. Home is not a place. Home is a feeling. And feelings don't appear on maps. I figured this out on a completely ordinary Tuesday. No fireflies. No dramatic conversations. Just me, standing in my kitchen, making peanut butter sandwiches for my kids' lunchboxes. The sun was coming through the window. The radio was playing some song I didn't know. My daughter was humming off-key in the living room. My son was trying to put his shoes on the wrong feet. And suddenly, for no reason I could name, I felt it. Home. Not because the house was beautiful. It wasn't. The cabinets were outdated. The carpet had stains. The fence still hadn't been painted. Not because my marriage was perfect. It wasn't. David and I had argued just the night before about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Not because my English had finally arrived at some imaginary finish line. It hadn't. I still said I have 30 years instead of I'm 30 years old just last week. None of that mattered. Because in that moment, standing in my messy kitchen with peanut butter on my fingers, I wasn't searching anymore. I wasn't longing. I wasn't comparing my life to some other life I could have lived. I was just, here. Present. Content. That's home. Home is not the absence of problems. Home is the presence of belonging. Let me say that again because it took me years to understand it. Home is not the absence of problems. Home is the presence of belonging. You can have a leaking faucet and a fight with your spouse and a child who refuses to eat vegetables and still be home. As long as you belong. As long as you're not pretending to be someone else. As long as you can be your imperfect, accented, still learning self and feel safe. That's what America gave me. Not a perfect life. Not a Hollywood ending. But a place where I could finally stop performing. A place where I could be the real me, the one who puts spoons in the wrong drawer, who reads macaroni boxes out loud. Who cries on the back porch and then comes inside and tries again. Mrs. Patterson once told me something I'll never forget. She was watering her garden. I was pulling weeds, actual weeds this time, not flowers. She looked over at me and said, "You know, I've lived in this house for almost 40 years. And I still don't feel like I belong here sometimes." I was shocked. Really? But you're Mrs. Patterson. You're the neighbor everyone knows. You bring cookies to new families. You wave at the mailman. She laughed. That's exactly why I do those things. Because I'm still trying to belong. Belonging isn't something that happens once. It's something you have to keep choosing. Every day. Every cookie. Every wave. That was a firefly. I had been walking around thinking that belonging was a destination. That one day, I would wake up and feel completely American. Completely at home. Completely comfortable in my own skin. But Mrs. Patterson, who was born in this country, who had lived in the same house for 4 decades, who was as American as apple pie and baseball, was telling me that she still had to work at belonging. That changed everything. Because if Mrs. Patterson still had to choose belonging every day, then maybe I wasn't failing. Maybe I was just human. Maybe belonging isn't about arriving. It's about showing up. Again and again. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The Firefly Promise is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. Every morning, I wake up and choose to belong. To my family. To my community. To this life I've built. Some days, it's easy. Some days, it's the hardest thing I do. But I keep choosing. Because that's what fireflies do. They don't glow once and then stop. They glow every night. All night. Until the sun comes up. My daughter asked me the other day, "Mommy, where is home?" We were in the car, driving home from school. The usual question. The one every parent gets. But something about the way she asked it, serious, thoughtful, like she really wanted to know, made me stop and think. Home is wherever we are together, I said. She rolled her eyes. She's 7. She rolls her eyes at everything. That's cheesy, Mommy. Maybe. But it's true. She looked out the window. Thought about it. Then she said, "So if we moved to Mars, Mars would be home?" If we were all together on Mars, yes. Mars would be home. She nodded. Okay. But can we not move to Mars? I don't think they have ice cream there. We laughed. And in that laugh, I felt it again. Home. Not the house. Not the country. Not the language. The laugh. The connection. The moment when two people understand each other completely, without needing perfect words. That's what I want you to take away from this video. Not a grammar lesson. Not a vocabulary list. Not a method for mastering the American accent. I want you to take away this. You are already home. You just haven't noticed because you're too busy looking for the wrong things. Stop looking for perfect English. Start looking for moments when someone understands you. Stop looking for a flawless marriage. Start looking for moments when your partner reaches for your hand. Stop looking for a life without problems. Start looking for the small lights that appear in the middle of the problems. Those moments are your home. Those small lights are your fireflies. And they are everywhere. You just have to remember to look. I'm not going to tell you that everything is perfect now. It's not. David and I still fight. My English still has holes. My kids still drive me crazy. The fence still hasn't been painted. But I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not waiting for the day when everything is fixed. I'm not waiting for the day when I finally feel like I belong. I already belong. Right here. Right now. With peanut butter on my fingers and a 7-year-old who rolls her eyes and a husband who leaves his socks on the floor. This is home. This messy, imperfect, beautiful home. And the fireflies? They're still here. Every summer. Blinking their tiny promises. Reminding me that darkness is never permanent. That small lights add up. That home is not a place you find. It's a place you build. One small light at a time. In the final section, I'm going to leave you with something. Not advice. Not a lesson. Just an invitation. An invitation to start your own Firefly journey. In English. In your life. In whatever way feels true to you. But first, look around where you are right now. This room. This screen. This moment. You are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be. And the Fireflies are waiting. Your Firefly journey in English. So here we are. The final section. If you've made it this far, you're not just a casual viewer. You're someone who is searching. Someone who has felt lost in the darkness of a new language, a new culture, a new life. Someone who has wondered if the small lights are enough. Someone who has asked the same question I asked on my back porch, years ago, what if I never find my way home? Let me answer that question for you. You will find your way home. Not because you're special. Not because you're talented. Because you're still here. You're still watching. You're still trying. And trying is the only thing that has ever worked for anyone. I want to tell you about something that happened last week. My daughter, the same one who caught fireflies in a jar and then let them go, came home from school with a homework assignment. She had to write a short story. Any topic. Any length. Just something from her imagination. She sat at the kitchen table for an hour, chewing on her pencil, staring at the blank page. Then she started writing. Fast. Like the words had been waiting for her. When she finished, she handed me the paper. Her handwriting is still wobbly. Her spelling is creative. But the story made me cry. Here's what she wrote. Once there was a little light. It was very small. It lived in a big dark yard. The little light was scared because it couldn't see any other lights. But it kept glowing. Every night. Even when no one glowed back. Then one night, another light appeared. Then another. Soon the whole yard was full of lights. And the first little light realized, it was never alone. It just had to glow long enough for the others to see it. She titled it The Firefly That Didn't Give Up. I asked her where she got the idea. She shrugged. I don't know. I just thought of it. But I know where she got it. She got it from watching me. From watching her father. From growing up in a house where small lights were collected and cherished and never, ever taken for granted. Your children are watching you. Your partner is watching you. Your neighbors are watching you. And every time you choose to keep glowing, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when your English feels like a tangled mess, you are teaching them something. You are teaching them that darkness is not the end. That small lights matter. That home is something you build, not something you find. Now, let me talk to you directly about English. You did not come to this channel by accident. You came because you want to improve your listening, reading, and speaking. You came because you're tired of textbooks that don't work and apps that make you feel stupid. You came because somewhere inside you, you believe that a new language could open a door. To a new job. A new relationship. A new version of yourself. You're right. It can. But not the way you think. English will not save you. It will not magically fix your problems or make you feel complete. What English will do is give you more small lights. More moments of connection. More opportunities to be understood. More chances to understand someone else. That's all. And that's everything. Stop trying to learn English like a machine. Start living it like a human. Read cereal boxes out loud. Leave sticky notes for your partner. Sing along to songs even when you get the words wrong. Call the doctor's office yourself instead of asking someone else to do it. Make mistakes in front of your children and let them see you laugh about it. Those are your fireflies. Collect them. Every single day. I have a challenge for you. For the next 30 days, find one small light every day. One moment when you used English to connect with someone. One sentence you understood that you didn't understand before. One word that felt good in your mouth. Write it down. Keep a list. At the end of 30 days, look at your list. You will see something amazing. You will see that you were never stuck. You were just collecting. And collecting is not failing. Collecting is how growth works. Here's what my list would look like if I started today. Day 1, I said have a good day to the bus driver and he smiled. Day 2, I understood the punchline of a joke on a TV show. Day 3, I read my daughter a bedtime story without stopping to ask my husband for help. Day 4, I made a phone call and only stumbled twice. Day 5, I forgot the word refrigerator and said the cold box and the person still understood me. That last one is my favorite. The cold box. That's not wrong. That's creative. That's a small light. Your English does not need to be perfect to be powerful. It just needs to be brave. I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself 1 year from today. You have been collecting small lights for 12 months. You have read boxes out loud. You have made mistakes in front of strangers. You have said the cold box and survived. You have sat in silence and listened to the sounds around you. You have watched fireflies blink and remembered that darkness is never permanent. What does that version of you sound like? Not perfect. Not fluent in the way textbooks define fluency. But connected. Understood. Brave. That version of you exists. Right now. In the future. Waiting for you to catch up. The only thing standing between you and that version is fear. And fear, my friend, is just darkness. And darkness has never stopped a firefly. I'm going to leave you with one last story. Last night, I sat on the back porch alone. The kids were asleep. David was working late. The fireflies were out, not as many as in June, but enough. Enough to remind me. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who sat on this same bench, crying into a mug of cold tea, convinced that she would never belong. That she would never learn English. That she would never be happy. I wanted to go back in time and tell her something. But I couldn't. So I'll tell you instead. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too old or too slow or too anything. You are exactly where you need to be. The darkness you feel right now is not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that the fireflies are about to appear. They always appear. You just have to wait. And while you're waiting, glow. Even a little. Even alone. Even when no one is watching. Glow. That's the Firefly Promise. Not a promise I made to David. A promise I made to myself. A promise I'm now making to you. Keep glowing. Collect small lights. Let them guide you home. And remember, home is not a place on a map. Home is the feeling of belonging. And you belong here. Right now. In this story. In this language. In this life. Thank you for staying with me through all 12 sections. Thank you for listening to my imperfect English, my imperfect marriage, my imperfect journey. You have been my fireflies today. And I am so grateful. Now go. Start your own firefly journey. Read something out loud. Leave a sticky note for someone you love. Sit in silence and listen. The small lights are everywhere. You just have to open your eyes. You made it to the end. But really? This is not the end. This is where your story begins. Close your eyes for 3 seconds. Think of one small light in your life right now. A kind word you heard today. A sentence you understood. A moment you didn't give up. Got it? Keep that light in your chest. Now open your eyes. Here's the truth they don't tell you about learning English: you don't need more lessons. You need more small lights. And this channel? We collect them. Together. One firefly at a time. I have a question for you. A strange one. What if the next firefly that guides you home is already blinking inside you? What if you just haven't noticed because you're too busy looking for the sun? That's the secret. The sun is beautiful. But fireflies? Fireflies are yours. Small. Steady. Always returning. If this video made you feel even 1% less alone, you owe it to yourself, and to the person you'll become tomorrow, to click that subscribe button. Not for me. For the future you who needs to hear more stories like this. Real English. Real life. Real hope. Do this now. Subscribe so you never miss the next firefly. Hit the bell, YouTube will notify you when a new small light appears. Comment one word, Firefly, so I know you were here. Let's build a community that glows together. The next video? It's already blinking in the dark. You don't want to miss it. See you on the porch. That's all for today. I'll make many more similar videos in the future. Please subscribe to watch.